Dear friends, welcome to another episode in the fantastic military world. In this video, we will talk about where, how, and when Vladimir Putin can use the massive Russian nuclear arsenal. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so now and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. On Thursday, February 29th, during his annual State of the Nation address, Vladimir Putin reacted to recent statements by French President Emmanuel Macron, who said that no option to defeat Russia in Ukraine can be ruled out, including even sending European soldiers to the battlefield. In response to this, Putin said in his speech that Russia would have no choice but to use nuclear weapons. Was this just another Russian nuclear threat, like dozens of others made in the past 2 years? Or can Putin actually use nuclear weapons if Europe sends soldiers to defend Ukraine? Theoretically speaking, any nuclear power can use its arsenal whenever it wants. For example, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un can launch nuclear warheads over Seoul, incinerating almost 10 million people living in that city in milliseconds. China, in turn, can drop nuclear bombs on the island of Taiwan, turning it into a smoldering and radioactive rock in the middle of the Pacific. And Russia can, if it wants to, drop nuclear bombs on Ukrainian cities, killing tens of millions of people and ending Ukrainian resistance forever. But if these countries can do all that, why don't they? They don't do it because they know the response will be the same. Even if a non-nuclear nation is hit by nuclear weapons, the effects of these bombs often spread across entire continents, effects that can include the destruction of agricultural fields, contamination of soil, water, and fishing in many other nations. Not to mention the fact that many non-nuclear nations like Japan and South Korea are covered by the nuclear umbrellas of other powers such as the United States. Therefore, in the examples I mentioned earlier, if Kim Jong-un launches nuclear warheads over South Korea, the United States is legally obligated to intervene by responding with nuclear weapons to the North Korean nuclear attack. Taiwan is not officially included in the nuclear umbrella of the United States, but it is a topic that has been increasingly debated in recent years. And despite Ukraine being in the same situation as Taiwan, outside of any alliance or nuclear umbrella, the effects of nuclear detonations on its territory would affect much of the European continent. Just remember the radioactive cloud from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which spread across much of Europe in 1986. If a few kilograms of nuclear material caused that radioactive cloud, imagine then dozens of bombs, each with 10 to 20 times the power of the bomb that devastated Hiroshima, exploding simultaneously over Ukrainian territory. In addition to causing millions of civilian casualties, the radiation would destroy agricultural fields in Romania, Poland, and the Baltic countries, affecting agriculture, soil, water, and fishing in many other nations. Therefore, a Russian attack of this kind, despite specifically targeting Ukraine, would be interpreted as an attack against the alliance, and therefore would lead to a nuclear equivalent response against Russia, something that, as we know, would result in a global nuclear war of catastrophic proportions. But regardless of that, can Putin launch nuclear weapons against Ukraine if European soldiers are deployed in that country? By law, Putin cannot do that. Most nuclear powers have very strict protocols involving the use of such weapons, with many of these protocols prohibiting the so-called first strike. That is, the use of nuclear weapons as an offensive means, limiting them only as a deterrent or, at the extreme, as a defensive means. This also applies to Russia. According to the Russian Constitution, the Russian nuclear arsenal can only be used in two very specific situations. The first is in response to a previous nuclear attack, and the second is as a last resort in the face of a conventional attack that seriously threatens Russian territorial integrity. Therefore, according to the literal interpretation of the Russian Constitution, the deployment of European troops in Ukraine, exclusively for missions to support Ukrainian defense, as it is not a previous nuclear attack and does not endanger Russian territorial integrity, would not authorize Vladimir Putin to use nuclear weapons. But, and this is a really big but, Putin believes that the Ukrainian regions of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Crimea are integral parts of Russian territory. Therefore, if European troops advance on Russian troops in these regions, threatening to expel them from there, Putin can interpret this as a threat to the self-proclaimed Russian sovereignty over those Ukrainian regions and, faced with that, can order the use of nuclear weapons. If that happens, the result will be the scenario I described earlier, with NATO responding to this Russian attack with nuclear weapons and initiating a global nuclear war there. Therefore, in the end, if Europe really sends troops to support Ukrainian defense, everything will depend on the good sense and discernment of Vladimir Putin. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe and activate the notification bell to not miss any news, criticisms, ideas, or suggestions. You can leave them in the comments.